Hey there, it's Tankerl, and this here is the Lumia 735. Yes, this is a mid-range phone on Microsoft's roster, but it's actually pretty nice. And first of all, as you can see, this is an orange one, and it looks really gorgeous. This front display here is a 4.7-inch 720p display. Under the hood, it's mid-range, so it has a Snapdragon 400 quad-core, 1 gig of RAM, 8 gigs of built-in storage, but there's a micro SD card slot and a nano SIM slot and a removable 2200 milliamp battery behind there and a removable shell. It does have wireless charging, which is awesome for a mid-range device. And then what's really kind of what it's known for is the front-facing camera, because it's a selfie phone. It has a 5 megapixel front-facing camera and is half decent. But what really shines about this is really this gorgeous 4.7-inch 720p AMOLED panel. It is incredible. It looks absolutely phenomenal. Look at these black levels. It is gorgeous. As you can see, there's no hardware keys. These are software soft keys that appear and you can dismiss anytime you want. If you're in an app, you can scroll down, they go away. Also, it lacks a camera button. Dedicated camera key is gone. That's common on a lot of the new Lumias, and that's a real bummer because the camera on this in the back is actually pretty good. Even though it's built as a selfie phone, it has pretty damn great rear camera, and I'll get to that in a second. So let's talk about that camera. This is the same camera as on the 720 last year. It's a 6.7 megapixel camera without OIS. So, let's just be clear, it's a mid-range phone, unlike the 830, which has a 10 megapixel camera with OIS. But this has an f/1.9 lens, which means it's super fast and it captures amazing low light. You can see here there's an LED flash, a secondary microphone, and then the Nokia logo and the little speakers down here. And so that's basically the back of it. In front, as I showed you already, this gorgeous display. You've got the earpiece here. You got that 5 megapixel front-facing camera that makes this a selfie phone. No physical buttons. Top here you have the headphone jack. Nothing on the left-hand side. On the bottom you have the micro USB charge and data port. And on the right hand side you got the power lock key and the volume button, volume rocker. But again, no dedicated camera button despite this f/1.9 6.7 megapixel camera that works really well. It's a bit of an omission, but hey. So you get all the good stuff you're used to on a Lumia device. That Snapdragon 400 with 1 gig of RAM is plenty sufficient, runs really well unless you're using games. Removable battery, all that is a really nice point. 2200 milliamp hour means goes for quite a bit of time. It says LTE. This is a European device, so it's stuck on HSPA Plus here in the US, but it does have LTE in Europe. There's a 730 that doesn't have LTE but has dual SIM, I believe. And so, of course, these shells are removable, and I love the design language. Reminds me so much of the original Lumia 800 and Nokia N9. It's really quite delightful. Feels great in hand. Of course, you can change the colors, and as I said, built-in wireless charging. And speaking of which, there is the Lumia 830, which is kind of its direct competitor in a way. They're both priced in very similar ranges. And even though the 830 is built as a higher-end device, in some ways, they're very similar. So that's what they look like side by side. Both have wireless charging. Both have 720p displays. Both have Snapdragon 400 processors with 1 gig of RAM. So very similar. The display here is 5 inches versus 4.7. And it's unfortunately an IPS panel that's not quite that great in terms of gray level. So this is where the 735 really wins. Look at these blacks. They're just incredible. You can really see the difference in black level. It's almost gray on the 830. So that's the big difference. Of course, dedicated camera button on the 830, which lacks on the 735, and you get a 10 megapixel autofocus camera with optical image stabilization. But the big difference is that the 830 only has an f-stop of 2.2, whereas f/1.9 really makes quite a bit of a difference. So you lose on the OIS, but you kind of gain on the f-stop. And frankly, I wish the 735 had a dedicated camera button, especially since it's a selfie phone. Now it has the Lumia selfie app, which is really quite awesome. You can see that the 830 is a little taller here, but they're both very thin phones. And so again, it'd be a really hard call for me if you really need the front-facing camera the 735 would be my call. And if you really want a display that's higher quality with a higher dot per inch count, that's the 735. But in terms of camera and imaging, the 830 kind of wins with the OIS. So another comparison, just to give you a feel for things, is the 930. 930 is obviously a much higher end device with a bigger screen and a 1080p display versus 4.7 inch 720p. So, you know, bigger phone because of the 5-inch display, you know, different processors, Snapdragon 800 in here. Of course, you can't compare the cameras, 6.7 megapixels versus 20 with OIS, different league. But that's not the point, just to give you a size comparison really here. And then if I stack them on top of each other, you can have a thickness comparison. They're both a bright shade of orange. About the same height, but much wider for the 930. And thickness, it's a little thinner, the 735. And then finally, it would be complete if I didn't compare this with the 630. So this is kind of one of the cheaper Lumias out there. And as you can see, you know, they're very different price points here, but LCD IPS panel, smaller display. This is what they look like in the back. 5 megapixels, no OIS versus 6.7 with f over 1.9 really makes a difference here. But both of them have the same on-screen buttons, no physical buttons, and both lack the camera button, which is now going away on some Lumias, which is kind of sad. But anyway, that's in a nutshell my review of the Lumia 735. Really awesome phone. The display, particularly the back camera, is surprising for being a non-PureView branded camera. It does have beautiful Zeiss optics and f over 1.9 lens, which is really fast. The lack of camera button is disappointing, but everything else about this phone is really great. So you can follow me on Twitter. I'm Tankgirl, that's TNKGRL, my blog, tnkgrl.com. And of course, I hope you follow me here on YouTube and that you like this video. Stay tuned for more coming very soon. Cheers!